think it's okay for authors, especially self-published authors, to just leave. When you feel there's a threshold that has been passed by your fans, by your community, it's okay to leave. Can you afford it? Because so much depends on it. So much depends on the reach of your following.
See, I'm one of these people that I love social media, and yes, I know there are dangers to it, and it can be kind of, detrimental in some cases. But I mean, I've been on Twitter since day zero, and I absolutely love it, and I would. It has become a part of my life so much that I don't think I personally could leave because I would feel like I'm missing out on stuff, that I'm not staying up to news, or staying up to date with news, or staying up to date with my fans. So I mean, it's kind of there's a little bit of a pressure there. Like you said, it's so important. There's a little bit of pressure from the marketing side, but for me personally, it is one of the aspects that I really enjoy about being a self-published author and having the ability to chat, on these platforms with multiple, people at once, and communicate what I'm doing to the world. But like I said, going back to my point before, it's that some people aren't built for that. Some people aren't built to, post X amount of times a day, or scroll through feeds and, engage with people and stuff like that. Again, everyone's different. And so I think, for instance, if it's in the case of Josiah, it was his decision to leave based on, the productivity, and also, kind of, I don't want to talk too much for Josiah's reasons, but it's to do with his own kind of comfortability and health and things like that. So when social media goes from that useful marketing method and enjoyable community and communication platform to something that's taking up your time, that's actually causing more stress than it is enjoyment, then absolutely, it's your prerogative to leave. And if it's damaging your writing or your family life or friends' life or mental health or any sort of way, then absolutely, it's time to maybe look at it and think, right, is it time to cut it out? And if the answer is yes, then by all means. And I think, obviously then it becomes a business decision for the marketing. And, am I actually, or, if I were to leave Twitter and Facebook, would I be damaging myself, on my career, my fan base? And I think, again, it's an individual decision for each author. And, I mean, Josiah's seen a huge amount of success over the last couple of years, and it's amazing to see. And he is probably able to continue that success through other aspects such as mailing lists, direct emails and things like that. And of course, he's got a publisher behind him as well, and that sort of thing. So it's not like he's disappearing completely. He's just disappearing from one channel that we used to communicate with him, very, very often with, I would say, because he was always on social media. But in that case, I mean, I think if it's beneficial to him, then more power to him. And I think, anyone else who does feel social media become more of a pressure than a tool or an enjoyment, then yeah, it's a business decision that you've got to make. But like I said, there are other ways to do it. There are other ways to keep in touch. Even before social media, there's a couple of examples when I was in the music world. I don't know why I pointed over there, the music world. It's because my bass is in the corner over there, that's why. But yeah, when I was in the music industry, I went to 11, 12 years ago and sort of studying music in Guildford in England, it was, a lot of things that, an aspect that we would discuss quite a lot, where you would find an artist. And this is before social media became so entrenched in our lives as well. I mean, Facebook and Twitter were around, but in terms of a marketing tool and a marketing method, they weren't anywhere nearly as prevalent. But with the aspect of certain artists getting dropped by record labels and things like that, there's one great example of an artist called Imogen Heap, and she was dropped by her record label, and yet she kept two very, very important things: a mailing list and her URL to her website, i.e., her brand and her name. And she managed to obviously go indie from that, and I mean, slightly different situation, slightly different industry, but it shows that there are multiple ways of keeping fans on, in your community, and keeping in touch with fans without social media. And there is a danger of thinking that social media is the be all and end all of, being an author, being a self-published author and marketing, where it's not the case really. But yeah.
So we have talked about negativity and the toxicity on social media, but what are the advantages of Twitter and Facebook? And what is the most effective way to reach new and potential readers through social media? How are you doing that?
So are you saying how do you get the most out of social media in general? Yeah, think it's multiple ways. Again, I mean, I've, like I said, been on social media for ages, almost too long, I feel. I was looking at the number of tweets that I had yesterday, and then divided it by the time that I was on social media, and I don't know whether it was depressing or kind of impressive, but yeah. Excuse me. I think it's to do with, I mean, consistency is something I always recommend to the authors I work with. You know, I've helped authors to do marketing over the last 8 years and something, if not more. And what I always say is consistency, and also think about what you're posting. So a lot of people will maybe dip into social media, because social media kind of moves so fast. Dipping in once or twice a week, you may not be as visible, purely through to the algorithms and the way that news feeds move, as other people who are posting more consistently. So if you have the ability to check in, using a smartphone or something like that on a, I wouldn't say hourly basis like I do if you're just starting out, but it's a daily basis, or a couple of times a day, that sort of thing. If you have the ability to check in and post, brilliant. That will add just almost kind of a mathematical improvement to your actual marketing and connecting with authors and readers as well. Otherwise, it's that classic term of content is key. That's become a marketing, byline for a marketing kind of motto for the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years now. But it's true. It's what you share defines who you are in social media. Social media doesn't revolve around, just the people itself. It's the people that are actually sharing, even if it's a picture of your beautiful, pancakes that you get at the local diner, or if it's, a hard hitting journalistic investigation of X and Y, it's still down to what you're sharing. So one of the recommendations I always make to authors and anyone else that I'm working with and advising is build a content plan. It doesn't have to be set in stone. It can it can move. It can be ever changing. But you need to figure out what you're posting. So for instance, when I started out, I analyzed what I had in my toolbox. What do I have to post? I was doing social media. I was obviously writing epic fantasy. I was doing it as an indie author while I was still working. So I kind of tried to create some content that fed into who I am and what that brand was, and all the while trying to either create a reaction or emotion in my followers. Is it funny? Is it informative? Is it you see a lot of content now about charitable causes, or feel good causes, or even things that enrage you. Emotional reactions are why people share things, and that is why social media works. Is because the content's posted and it's shared out for a reason. So hooking into that reason and identifying what emotional reactions you can make in people through content is the key to getting content right. And then it's just marrying up essentially, how you're going to post that, where you're going to post that, and then time, because obviously, just joining Twitter doesn't automatically guarantee you 2,000 fans, and posting a blog doesn't automatically get you 1 million retweets. It's time. It's obviously building up the visibility through those algorithms and the consistency, and making a name for yourself. But a lot of people will think you can do that overnight, which is unfortunate. But it's one of those kind of misconceptions that just keeps hanging around, unfortunately. But yeah, it's time, consistency, and content, I would say, is the best way to connect with your audience, and build a bunch of friends. I mean, that's what social media is. It's social media, not sales media. So there is the huge social aspect there that you've got to just, build relationships, and that takes time.
Yes, I've been talking to a lot of people, and my experience is that authors who only share marketing and ads, they find it harder to connect with people, because after a while, people are more interested in the person itself than the ad. So is there a balance? You have to show your own personality, which makes people easier to connect with you, and the ads and the marketing you do for your books. So is there a balance, or how can you maintain that balance?
I think it's I mean, it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult because it is a balance. I mean, the thing is, because I always say one of the questions that always pops up when I'm working with authors, especially debut authors, is the question of whether you should have a Facebook page for your books or Facebook page for your author. So one of my kind of follow-up questions instantly is, well, how many books are you planning? And that sort of thing. So, I mean, if it's going to be one sole, publication that is, it's all about the book and it's, it's just completely focused on that, then yeah, maybe you think about just the sole page for the one book or something like that, or the one product. I always lean to, even if it's just the one, I would still kind of want to lean to having the author as the page. And the reason I use that as an example is because, like you said, there's the personality and there's the product, and there is a balance to be achieved between that. And for me, it's actually the personality, I think, that sells it. Because I might not, know what the book's, obviously inside a book and the thematic contents and things like that. But if I'm seeing an author, and there's plenty of good examples out there in the social media sphere at the moment. But if I see an author who's, being funny or witty or something like that, and kind of showing off a bit about what they do, even, where they've been in the day, pets, family, that sort of thing, it's easier to connect to, even on a psychological level, because you are seeing a person. And you're not seeing the product necessarily straight away, and it's harder on a personal level, on a human level, to connect with a product, even though we might know there is going to be obviously characters and storylines and emotions to get involved in with the book. It's easier to gauge someone as a person, even through social media, a lot quicker. Even though people don't have like reviews and things and stuff like that. So you can get a very good sense of a person. And often that is something for me, and I know for a lot of other readers as well, actually sells a book or enables a follow or gets people curious. Great example of that recently is something, RJ Barker. He's funny as on Twitter and Facebook. And I actually saw him release the books almost at the same time. But since then, had I not, seen what books he's been publishing, I would have been, straight onto the wish list, with the entire series straight away. And that was, purely down to just a personality. And again, with, Josiah and things like that, he really stood out, just for being an absolute, as we'd say back in England, like solid gold chap on Twitter. Friendly as hell. He was always, helping people out. Again, funny, witty, and that, to be honest, actually gave me a flavor for what he was writing as well, because he's kind of putting that forward in a brand. And so I think he's a great example of, how you can really get used to the personality of someone, and then you read the book and it's almost like reading, an 80,000 word long tweet from Josiah with all the care and the funniness and wittiness that he put into each and every single tweet. So that sort of thing, I think is really important. So I always recommend, just thinking about whether you have that personality that could be, a product in itself, whether again, it comes back to the question of whether you're comfortable on social media and whether that suits you. And, don't be afraid to actually say, no, it doesn't suit me. I don't want to get my personality out. And so that balance would be more product based than, personality based. A lot of people, are almost kind of the other way. They will show a lot of their personality and what they get up to in daily life. And they go, oh yeah, I write books. Here's one, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it would suit you, but I think personality could be a very, very strong driving factor behind sales and behind follows and behind a subscription to a person.
What do you think? What is the difference for self-published and traditional published authors for using social media? For I think for self-published authors, using social media is more crucial, I think, because they have to sell their own books.
A little bit,
and the traditional published authors, they have a publishing house, marketing behind them. So what are the differences?
Yeah, I think the first thing to think about when you're a self-published author is the fact that, you never really publish alone, because you should have created a professional team behind you, editors, cover designers, that sort of thing. You should have built your team. So the idea of indie publishing and self-publishing is a bit of a misnomer. But people are very aware of that now and building a professional team. But yeah, when it comes down to it, the team member who does the marketing is usually the author. But that's actually true for a lot of traditional published authors anyway, because it's not every single author that will get a marketing team behind them from a publishing house. Depending on the publishing house as well, they can't actually spend a lot of time marketing individually each author's, purely because of the size of their catalog and things like that, or even just, you know, the kind of level of advance, you know, an author might get. If it's particularly a low advance and things like that, it might not come with any sort of marketing backup. So I think that's kind of a misconception that a lot of people think as well, that, you know, once you're traditionally published and sign the deal, that's it, you don't have to do any marketing. That is, from a lot of experience and chatting to a lot of authors over the years, that's just not true for a lot of people. So I think marketing and particularly social media is equally important for both traditionally published authors and self-published authors. I'm just going to call them authors. And I think, you know, it is important. But to take it back to the self-published area, you know, obviously there is, you don't have a publishing house actually kind of advertising that your books are out there, and you kind of lack a bit of the organic push that a lot of publishers can provide simply by providing more visibility in bookshops, you know, releases, you know, things like, you know, NetGalley and stuff like that, where they can actually push out to more reviewers. So yeah, I mean, you still get a few benefits from the traditional world, absolutely. And that, you know, is lacking sometimes in the self-publishing world. So yes, you do have to put more time into marketing in general. You know, as a modern author these days. And yeah, social media is a crucial part of that, mainly because it's the way it works, basically, for me. I mean, it's fast, it's real time. I can chat to people, you know, anywhere I want, essentially, in the world. You can't get that with mailing lists. Your website is more of, you know, a brochure site that people interact with rather than you interacting with them, especially not on a real-time basis. You know, you can react to people, you can start entire threads, you can go viral. So the beauty of social media when it works is incredible. And I think, you know, that's why, you know, we'll see both types of authors using it. But I think what we'll see is, because an indie author has to kind of get in on that ground level first off, and they know that it's a very, very key marketing method, at least for communication, if not sales, then I think that, you know, it becomes a bit more important to the indie author, because they don't have maybe that, you know, element of backup, whatever that might look like. Yeah, I think it's something that I definitely jumped on straight away. I think, right, I've got to let people know what I'm up to. And that is the beauty of it for me. It's I don't know why I think that's a bit narcissistic. But when you start out, obviously, you're very, very keen to share what you've created and your book and things like that. So just, I mean, like I said, massive proponent of social media. I bloody love it. And that's why, you know, I like just chatting to people. And I've made so many friends. I mean, you guys, for instance, you know, we wouldn't be here without kind of social media, really. You know, to me, you and I connected over Facebook and things like that 20 years ago. Alex was the same. But, you know, from that, we've done events together. We've done interviews, done blogs, reviews, things like that. And now, you know, a live chat on YouTube. And it's, you know, that's an example, I think, of some of the beauty of social media. It's just the community aspect of it, even if it's not the sales aspect of it. And I think indie authors chase that and therefore adopt it a lot more easily and a lot more passionately than I think your average traditional author. It's very hard to generalize and say, you know, it's black or white, because so many people out there are being, you know, very, very different.
Ben, how do you keep things civil?
Civil?
Yeah, and positive and friendly, because sometimes, despite the best intentions of the authors, things get toxic, really toxic. How do one overcomes it and controls?
Excuse me, I think it comes down to the person as well. I'm a very civil person. So I'm always, I mean, in friend groups and things like that, if there's an argument to be had, as much as I love a good argument and a good discussion and a, you know, discussion more than argument, I'd say, but as I love a good back and forth and things like that, it's not, I mean, yeah, in my personal life, I choose to break up discussions like that or try and find a solution. I'm very kind of calm and political when it comes to that. So that's essentially, I think, just has bled into my social media. So, I mean, I don't really like to be confrontational. So I keep things civil naturally. If anyone has a complaint, I'm always kind of I've worked for years in customer service before going full-time as an author. So I think that kind of helps, working on bars and food kiosks and things like that, and dealing with some just absolutely terrible people over the years. I think it just kind of installs a bit of patience. So I mean, yeah, that's my personal kind of approach from it. But I think how does one keep things civil is just keep a level head, and it's very hard to do because obviously you've written a book and you spend maybe up to 10 years, if not more, or a couple of years at least, writing this book and pouring all of your passion and your drive into this book, and it becomes like a child, like a little baby, that if anyone were to speak badly about, you can't help naturally take it personally. So it's very important, I think, because a lot of authors we've seen, well, not a lot of authors, but we've seen a good number of authors get in trouble over the last 10 years, roughly just kind of taking on people who leave bad reviews. And that very, very rarely ever ends up in a nice situation. It normally ends up in a sticky situation. So I think it's very important to separate passion from business. And I, again, approach this as a very entrepreneurial sense. And I always think business first. That does take some training, and it's taken me a couple of years to do it. But when I approach it, I try and, even if a review really, really antagonizes me, I just take a moment, I step back and I think business. Okay, this person has possibly paid for my book. They haven't enjoyed it. That's fair enough. I've done that. Okay, I do that all the time. Books throughout my life, and so do other people. So, yes, that person might have then gone on and cursed at you, offered zero feedback and kind of blasted the book. In that case, again, I have to remove the passion. I think business-like. I think, right, well, is this a fair review? Okay, fair enough, it is. The person doesn't like my book. I will thank them. I will always thank them, say thank you for your time, or thank you for giving it a chance, and then leave it there. Whether that's on Goodreads, on Amazon, social media, what have you. If it's someone that is verbally and consistently, not verbally, sorry, specifically attacking me, I again have to think of the business. And do I engage with those sorts of ones? No, because you never feed the trolls. You can report things on Amazon. You can get other fans and contacts to maybe class the review as unhelpful on Amazon, things like that. You can chat to mods and in places like Reddit and things like that, because there are these functionalities in place in social media to stop abuse happening. Whether they work 100% of the time, whether they work very quickly is another discussion for another time. But the functions are there, so you have a way to basically sort that out. But the trick is not trying to sort it out yourself by going, oh, how dare you? This is an absolute terrible, you bastard, or whatever. Because that's not businesslike. That's not what you do. And we are businesses, indie authors, self-publishing authors, traditional authors. Anyone who wants to make money from what they do is a business, however they publish, however they run it. But you have to think that success comes from, thinking like a business, thinking of profit, thinking of brand image and things like that. And that's what it comes down to. So I remain civil for the betterment of my business and my books and their success. And, talking about that balance between personal aspect, if you are going very personal, you might run a little bit of a risk of, getting those people and things like that. But again, just take a moment, think about what this could, the ramifications of, of engaging with someone or attacking someone, and essentially don't do it. Think as a business, take a moment and just really approach it. And it's tough, sometimes I've wanted to throttle people through the screen for stuff that they've said about the book that I've worked so hard on. It's natural, but again, that separates a lot of different authors, from the successful authors and the professional authors to the people who might not see success or, might not get a better handle on this industry. It's because they're not separating the passion and the product.
Considering everything, what do you think? This is the best time to be self-published author?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I've been saying that for years. It used to be when I started doing talks and things in 2012. My first slide was good news. This is the best time to be an author. I still think that's true. That's gone true every year, because I mean, look at the industry that we're seeing at the moment as a pure facts and numbers based perspective. We are seeing increases in genres. We are seeing an uptick in a lot of genre fiction. We are seeing huge audiobook uptick and things like that. It's a very, very healthy industry, no matter what a lot of people will say. I mean, we had the author earnings report last year, which was a bit kind of depressing, but not going into the pool of the information. Obviously, it's a it's a very useful report, but again, it doesn't take into account everyone. But in the communities that I'm seeing on a personal level, aside from all of the business news that we've got going on, the industry as a whole, personally, I've never seen, scandals aside recently, the community be, more of a vibrant, busy, just ever-changing, exciting place. It seems like I blink and a new book has come out, which is brilliant because my TBR is ridiculous, and it probably will topple over and kill me at some point in the next couple of months. But I mean, I would rather have that than a time where I'm thinking like, oh, where are the books? Why has no new books come out, or why is it the same stuff? And we're seeing so much vibrancy, and we're seeing people chasing so many different subgenres and exploring this and exploring that with kind of reckless abandon almost. But it's brilliant because we have the time that enables us to do that. We have the healthy market. We have the ability to pursue niches and actually make, an income from those niches using social media marketing and writing down good books. When I started out, self-publishing info was really lacking. I had to, basically build up a whole method myself. And that's why I now teach to authors, but it took me years. I didn't use an editor for, a couple of the first books that I pushed out and have since re-edited because I've learned the lesson. But most authors who start out now won't make that mistake because people have been saying, over and over and communicating to the community, edit, get a cover designer, and things like that. So the information is, far more easy to get your hands on now. Self-publishing itself has become almost standardized. Get your team, produce the book, be professional, launch on these platforms, and then it's down to the marketing. People are kind of knowing that now. Whereas, when I first started out, everyone was like, self-publishing? Is that vanity publishing? And they just, the idea of it wasn't really as concrete as it is now. So I think, we're just getting better and better and better. And, I suppose the argument of that is you could say you're saturating the market, things like that. But I don't think the readers out there would agree. I think, more fiction, the better, more fantasy, the better, more sci-fi, the better. And I think, it's the reader that drives this community and this, industry as a whole, and I think, it's an amazing time for them. And that's why I think it's an amazing time for us.
With the growing community and the more people who publish their books, it gets harder to stand out, to find your own fan base and your own audience. So yeah, you have to. I guess you have to change with the times. So how do you keep up with the trends and the changes?
Yeah. Being a part of the community definitely helps as well. So, for instance, news will spread like wildfire, and indie authors, authors in general seem, very, very, well, I'd say indie authors seem a little more kind of driven to do this than a lot of the traditional authors that I've seen over the years. But again, I think that is changing. But there's a huge community of sharing and shared knowledge. And the idea of thinking, well, if I can help my fellow author, that doesn't damage me or my sales, that actually just raises us collectively as a whole, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because there are very few industries out there that actually seem to have that. It's a very competitive industry in music or in film and things like that. Whereas in the book world, we indie authors just seem to be very, very keen to be like, oh, this is how you use Facebook ads, or have you tried MailChimp, or this sort of thing. So the news will spread very, very easily to help keep people up to date. Kindle boards are a great example of that as well. And, certain changes to Amazon spreading through the industry very, very quickly so we can react to it. So that's a very, very easy way of keeping up to it, is just, keeping your finger on the pulse and making sure you're abreast of what, the rest of the authors are doing, your fellow authors are doing. Otherwise, it's it's a simple case of actually getting stuck into the platforms. There's a lot of experimentation that can, and should happen with things like Amazon marketing services, AMS ads, basically, and Facebook ads and things like that. Because one person's success might not necessarily translate if you did exactly the same thing as they do, because everyone's book is different, everyone's platform is slightly different, and everyone's personality is slightly different as well, as a brand. But I think, once you maybe take the example from someone who has been successful and trying to apply it to yours, if you can experiment and kind of take the overall themes or the overall kind of methods that they're using, and then apply it to your platform. I think that's a great way of trying new things and seeing what works. Because as we know, if even if the marketing stayed still, the readers would change. And even if the readers change, then the marketing platforms would just change anyway. I mean, even in the last couple of weeks, I've just logged onto Facebook ads and a button has disappeared, or that's gone over here, or, this new thing has appeared. And you're thinking, well, what's this? And the trick is just to experiment and find out if it can, help you, your brand, your sales, because obviously there are sales and there's brand visibility as well. So there are different benefits you can get from different marketing methods. But try them out, because you might either find a way through that no one else has, or you might suddenly be on the cusp of a wave and things like that is about to break in terms of a marketing method and stuff like that. But at the same time, doing all that, keeping abreast of what's going on, staying in the community and experimenting. There is still, I would say, because the danger is then that you kind of chase all these new things and you spread yourself too thin over lots of different platforms in an effort to kind of stay up to date and stay on the cusp of marketing. But at the same time, certain things don't change in the marketing world. Mailing lists still useful, things like that. So we have these like very, very formed, very, very kind of entrenched ways of marketing that we should still be using. And I think a lot of people will forget about them. And yes, you could use those in a slightly different or new, interesting way. By all means, try and do that. But don't forget the bread and butter or the bare bones of marketing, which is, building a contact list, be that social media or email or, website visitors, whatever, being, visible, again, website and social media, and sharing content. Primarily that's your book, but then obviously it's blogs, things like, conversations like this, images, maps, loads of other stuff. Those have always been the cornerstones of marketing, and I can't see them really not being the cornerstones of marketing. So yeah, I think that's the best way of doing it is, stay abreast of what's going on, experiment, but also don't forget your bare bones and your foundation of marketing as well.
Ben, I'd like to ask, because I've been wondering about it for some time, that considering there are no gatekeepers in self-publishing. Basically, there are no agents, there are no publishers, there are no marketers who are saying which book might blow up, which won't.
Yeah.
Why aren't self-published authors more daring with the form and with content? Because the newest and the freshest thing in book form, I've seen you animating the covers.
I love doing that.
Yeah, because it catches your eye. It catches the attention. It grabs you and it doesn't let you go because it's something new and it's awesome. Why others aren't doing it? And my followers on Twitter know that I've been in the drum of House of Leaves for years. And I'm saying that why is no one else daring to do the same? Yeah, maybe publishers are against it because it's hard, because it limits the audience. But why aren't self-published authors doing stuff like that?
I think to a point we are. There are more authors in the self-publishing world, or there are more indie authors out there trying new things that haven't been done before than there are traditional imprints or houses, that are trying to do the same thing as well. So I think there's a very, very tough balance to be achieved between commercialism and pushing the envelope. Because don't forget, I mean, the book industry has been around for hundreds of years, really. And the idea of a book in its current format, front matter, the book, back matter, or even just, the idea of, beginning, middle, and end, that sort of thing. The idea of what the book is very set in our minds. That doesn't mean that there isn't a space for new stuff. And I think it's brilliant, that people are trying new stuff. And I agree with you that new stuff should be, explored. And, either whether it's the form of the book or what, we do in the marketing, or even things like, animated covers on Amazon. That would look amazing. Even, I'll tell you what, I saw one on Netflix, actually, technically. And it was the new, what's his name, Bear Grylls. The new Bear Grylls thing where you can, it's a gamification where you can choose where he goes and things like that. But their cover on Netflix moves, and it's just him descending from a rope, messing and flapping his hands and going back up again. And every single time I see it, I go, oh, that sort of thing. So I mean, yeah, I know that's a random example from Netflix, but I think that idea of what things should be and their original form is being kind of changed and being kind of reforged as we go. But yes, we're not seeing it on a huge blanket scale at the moment. And the reason is because commerciality still exists, and the idea of being commercial and fitting into that, into the essentially fitting into the shape of a book is very important to the reader. And a lot of readers don't want to try something new. I heard someone refer to it as the subway effect. Whereas every time you go to Subway, you normally order exactly the same sub, and if it's not exactly the same sub as the one you had last time, it's not happy. It's not a happy experience.
Yeah.
I do the same thing: chicken pizziola, whole grain, honey oat, whatever it is, Southwest sauce, every single time for the last 5 years. So people kind of approach the book world like that as well. People will go, I want a book like this, and I want to have the same emotional reaction, i.e. the same taste in your mouth as a Subway, as this book I had before. Maybe a few things might be slightly different, okay, but essentially they want the same emotional reaction. So that's where the commercial aspect comes in. So a lot of authors will naturally write towards what the reader wants, and for good reason, because that's essentially, I wouldn't say it's it's very hard to make those sorts of guarantees, but by writing commercially, you have more chance of commercial success. However, it's not to say you can't write uncommercially and still see that success as well. And again, as we see the industry expanding out and a lot of people diversifying, and indie authors still flooding the scene and constantly experimenting, we will see more of this carry on. But I think there is still the element of, you want to make, if you're approaching this professionally, you want to be a professional at the end of it. So you can't write the weirdest book that has maybe upside down words on one page across 1,000 pages, even though that'd be interesting and fun, as an example off the top of my head. It might not be the bestseller because it's a little bit strange, compared to what we've had in our minds for the last 150 years of what a book is. A great book that I thought did actually push the envelope that I read recently is the Raw Shark texts, as in raw shark texts. And there are pages you'll go through, and then suddenly the page will just transform into a shape, and all the text will be in a shape of a shark and things like that. And the book itself is very, very, very conceptual and very strange, but brilliant. Highly recommend it. But within the actual book itself, the beginning, the middle, and end was turned on its head and stuff, and things were different. And that was actually really refreshing and enjoyable. Is it a bestseller? I mean, it's quite popular and it sold a lot of books, but I mean, not a lot of people I know are in the SFF world, and it's outside that. But I do mention it to people, and it doesn't seem to be the one that everyone knows, So perhaps I'd have to look into it, but perhaps that hasn't achieved the commercial success because it is a little bit strange. But personally, I think the envelopes do need to be pushed. I mean, I like experimenting with niches. Of course, animated covers, I think, personally, will become a bit more of the norm because they are more exciting. But yeah, I think, it is time to experiment, because why stay stagnant? I think we are struggling to do it overnight, essentially. A lot of indie authors will be kind of experimenting, but I think the readers are, for the majority, I think for the majority expecting a certain style at the moment, and I think that will change, but not just yet. But yeah, more power to people who are experimenting, though, because I mean, why not? Like I said, now's the best time to do it, because if you get it right, the actual risk, the cost of the risk, i.e., the actual outlay and the initial spend that you have for the cover, the editor, etc., it might not be zero, but it's not absolutely huge, and you can actually take a risk without a huge amount of outlay. And you can see where that goes and learn from that. It's something I tried to do with Chasing Graves a little bit, is by not really having, well, I apparently broke 2 rules. I think, Timmy, you'll probably be able to tell me about this one, is having first person and third person in the same book mixed, which I enjoyed. I thought it was fun. But someone was like, how dare you do this? This is against all grammar rules ever. I said, well, why not? And that was just a friend. So I tried to break that rule, and by not having more of kind of the traditional kind of story arc, the middle, the end, the denouement, etc. With that, I just wanted a whole story that did this through it. So I mean, in little ways, personally, I'm trying to break a little bit of the status quo. I haven't written a book backwards yet or anything like that, but we'll see. But yeah, I think in little ways, indie authors are actually experimenting, and some authors are experimenting in a huge way. And I think that will become more and more acceptable, and people will be interested in trying new things in the future.
Listen, there was a lot of talk and scandal about piracy.
I've been tracking them for years and things like that. I've done cease and desists. I don't, have a hotshot lawyer or something like that to go after it, but other publishers do. And I think an amazing way of doing it would be is if, I know publishers are fighting it, and obviously they have legal teams doing that as well because it's their rights involved. But I think if more was done, more could always be done. And also on an individual basis as well, by maybe educating readers and things like that, and battling the kind of the prevalent concept that art should be free in the communities that think that. I think showing that and being vocal about it and showing the readers how it could actually damage authors and things like that, it needs to be talked about a bit more, and it needs to have more action put into it. Personally and individually as an author, what can you do? Digital rights management is a way of dealing with it. It's something you can add on things like on places like KDP, DRM, and Kobo, Google Play and stuff like that. So there's an element, there are steps you can take, making sure that you're not sharing kind of PDFs or Word documents or whatever, and things that can be just copied, republished and posted, by people, is also another step you can take. That's difficult when you're reaching out to reviewers though and things like that. Obviously, you run a reputable blog, and so does Three Crows magazine and stuff like that. And it's just, I'm never going to be worried about sending books to people like you, but there are, someone could get in touch with me and has got in touch with me and say, oh, could you send me a review copy? I run a blog. I'm thinking, right, where's the blog? And then the blog doesn't materialize. And so maybe an author's reader's just trying to get a free book. What if they are trying to get the PDF or the EPUB or something like that so they can upload it to a place like eBook Play? So you just need to be very careful and not keen to be throwing your books out all over the place. Obviously, giveaways and promotions are slightly different, and you do take a bit of risk in there. But again, where you can, try and vet the people that you're giving your books out to, just to try and limit that. But again, someone's always going to download the book, hack the DRM, something like that, and throw it up if they wanted to. So fight it where you can, take the steps that you can, but also just try and educate people, be vocal about it. Get out there and chat about why piracy is a shit show. It's sort of swearing I'm going to do now. I knew when we got to book piracy, I would get angry.
It baffles me that the persons that you show the trust by sending them the copy would go to the lengths of hacking the DRM and uploading it. Why? Well, is it informed by the struggling artist preconception?
I mean, there is but if that's the prevalent, or if that's the kind of the I don't know, the main view we have of artists, why make them struggle more? As a consumer, I don't get that. And yes, I mean, I do enjoy getting music for cheap on Spotify and Netflix, but I do feel like I should be paying more to certain people behind them, more independent artists, people who don't have massive record labels or aren't getting $1 billion per film or whatever and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just this, people will go to those lengths for the exact reason people will go to the opposite lengths of protecting themselves. It's because they believe so strongly that art should be free, and they're wrong. But they believe it so strongly. I mean, you could call that, or you could draw quite a few parallels between stuff that's happening in the political world today. But look at it. I mean, people are so sure that a certain someone is the best person to lead a certain country ever. I'm not going to get political. Either way, yeah, people think, this political leader is the best thing that's ever happened, or, that is, and people believe things so strongly that they will go to lengths to do it. And so obviously you're going to have in a community that group of people who will just spend their days hacking DRM and uploading books because, damn it, art should be free. And what they don't realize is that they're wrong. They should try writing a book and then seeing someone being like, oh, cheers for that free book. How you getting on? How's your bank account? Yeah. You'll always get the two ends of the spectrum. So it's about, I find, politely and in a business way, fighting that other side of the spectrum. So yeah, like I said, being more vocal, but let's not attack people. Let's not create that toxicity or that lack of civility that we were talking about earlier. But be vocal, be fact-based, be straightforward about it, and do what you can do. Yeah.
To wrap it up, I'd like to ask Ben and Timy, do you think there's a bright future for self-publishing? Will there more self-published authors than traditionally published authors in the future? And how does more quality await us in the future?
What do you think, Timy? I'll let you say it. So.
It's hard to say. I think there will be more self-published authors because publishing houses only contract a handful of authors. The last 2 years, I mostly read self-published authors, and I can say the quality is awesome. So I think, I don't know. Yeah, I think there is a place for self-publishing, and more and more people will discover how great these authors are, and will read their books because they are really good.
Yeah,
Ben, what do you think?
I'm inclined to agree. I mean, it's interesting. You'll always get the author who just wants to publish just to see that they can, or just to put the book out, and it's more of a it's not a be all and end all. This is my new profession that I will seek, and I will be a best-selling author. It's just an accomplishment that they want to share with the world and have it out, and you'll always get that sort of brand of author. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have an author who is dead set on being a professional author and wants to create a business out of self-publishing. I think we will see, as self-publishing has become even more standardized and things like that, and I think more and more people are aware of self-publishing now and how actually relatively easy it is. I think we'll see a lot more people kind of flooding in from that side of the spectrum and just publishing and enjoying, but also putting time and effort into their craft. And I think we'll see a lot of people actually being picked out of that who have just really put time and effort, even though it's a hobby, and will be found out to be great writers. And then hopefully, the way that the industry works and the way that people talk about books will hopefully shine a light on them. But I think what we will do is see more professional self-publishers, either authors who are putting the time and effort in to be professional, so that they are, rising above the rest. They are getting the high quality covers, spending time working on their craft, and therefore standing out from the kind of very large chunk of the industry, which is somewhere in between, where unprofessional publishing happens and people are, they want to be an author, but they don't quite figure out how or can't see how to get there. And then you might not see it's the quality that's holding them back, because there's still quite a lot of those authors around. So I think we'll see a separation of those sorts of, I wouldn't say hobbyists, because I don't think it's a hobby. Well, obviously it is, but I think they're not approaching it as a hobby. We'll see basically a lot of authors who are kind of just dipping their toe in self-publishing, and then we'll see a lot of authors kind of rising to the top and actually making more of a profession out of, or making a profession out of books and out of writing. And I think we'll see a gap in the middle, whereas if you're not really trying, or you're not putting the time in to be professional, it's not going to be worthwhile for you. And I think that's essentially what a lot of the author report actually showed, is that cream rising to the top, and a lot of people not quite getting self-publishing right, or getting the writing correct at the start, and it's just not working for them for one reason or a variety of reasons. And so they kind of throw the towel in. A lot of authors and a lot of people I've worked with have said that in the last couple of months. So yeah, it's just not working for me. I'm not going to do it. So obviously that looking at where it's going wrong is another discussion as well. But I think that's what we'll see. More self-publishers overall, but more professional self-publishers, and less of the stigma in the middle ground as people just kind of realize that actually they haven't done it right, or they can't do it, or they're not right for it, or they might not see what they've done wrong. In any case, I think we'll see that separation on stores like Amazon, in the community and stuff.
And what would be your advice for someone who wants to be a self-published author? What would be your single advice?
Professionalism. Always that. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I should come up with a new answer. I've said it quite a lot, almost in every single time this question's ever come up, but it's true. It is so true. It's, the cover catches the eye of the person on the store or in a bookshop. Okay, so if you haven't got a good cover, you're not going to catch their eye. You're not going to communicate style, quality, genre, and things like that with your artwork. Let's say if you get a fantastic cover, but you don't get an editor. they're going to be like, "Oh, brilliant cover! What's this? Amazing! Oh, they've spelt, there's a spelling mistake in the first line or something like that," and then the enjoyment's gone, and whatever. If you get both wrong, you can't give anyone anything. So I mean, there are a lot of readers out there that they won't mind so much about quality, and it's about kind of the story, the emotional reaction and things like that, and they'll gloss over that happily. And I love those readers because if they ever do notice a mistake in my books, they're like, "Oh, cool, yeah, it's fine, doesn't matter." And not that traditionally I've seen mistakes in traditionally published books as well, and I do the same thing. I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. Editing's tough, especially when you got like a Brandon Sanderson or George R. R. Martin or Patrick Rothfuss-sized book when it's like this. It's very, very difficult job. So yeah, there are readers like that which will gloss over it, but the majority will be so inundated by the amount of books to read in this, exciting and overflowing industry that we have now, that they won't take chances, and they will look for something that looks quality, that gets amazing reviews, that doesn't mention a single word about mistakes, and the story's not perfect, the story's incredible. So I think, if you're not doing that, you can't rest on those people because there aren't enough of them. So professionalism down the line, just get your team together, get your publishing team together, your author, your editors, your formatters or typesetters, get the team, get the pros that can make a professional product that you could put side by side with a traditionally published book, and the best traditionally published book, the bestseller of the last decade. And if you can put both books together and you can't tell the difference in quality or where it's come from, job done. Excellent. Then it's all about your story, and that's what every author has in common. And that even though self-publishing has pretty much become standardized, and we're seeing a lot of success in a lot of different areas, it always comes back to the book. And I see a lot of authors who won't, will push out book after book after book, even like a book a month and things like that. And yes, they've got the pro team working on the stuff and the professional covers and edits, whatever, but there's still story. And if the story's not there, we're writers, we're not publishers or marketers, really. We are writers, we are authors. So I think, a lot of that, and that comes back to professionalism as well. Be a professional. It's by writing a professional story, work on your craft, read every day. I wouldn't necessarily say qualifications are the way to go, but they might be for you. So in any case, professionalism just feeds into every single aspect of it. And by ticking every box and making sure you don't drop or lack any professionalism in any area, it gives you the best chance possible. And that's when it comes back to the strength of your story. So yeah, I think it puts us all on an interesting kind of level playing field when you think about it. And that's why, I don't understand why more people aren't working on their craft. Even me, I should be reading today, but I'm not. I normally spend a bit of the morning reading as well as writing. I'm like, I haven't done that today, but yeah.
Instead, you are with us, and we're very grateful for it.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll do it later. Yeah.
Sorry, Ben's fans. He's not working on his craft. He's working with us today. Yeah,
it's been a pleasure. That's great.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, Timy. We've had so much fun, and Ben's new story is on Amazon, if I remember correctly, and issue 3 of Three Crows is already available on our site and on Amazon, and go enjoy it. Probably.
It's great.
Thank you very much, Ben. And to conclude, I'd like to say that being kind and being professional goes a long way and helps you build a community that will lift you up. So anyone who wants to build any relationship with an audience and with his community, just don't be an asshole and be professional. Yeah.
That's the best marketing advice you could give. Don't be a dick.
So thank you very much for those who are watching, who've been with us. The links are in the description, and good luck. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Timy.
Thank you very much, Timy. Thank you, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.